About to call our December Sustainability Commission to order. And I'm going to start with roll call. So, Steve?
Here.
Tim?
Here.
Brooke?
Here.
Kristen?
Here.
Swan?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Is Mizan on the phone or?
I have nobody else on the phone.
Yeah, he did not give me a pre-excused absence, so we'll give him a couple minutes to join and then continue.
Okay. Do we have one member of the public, Mary, on the? Oh, Mary's here. Okay, so there's nobody on.
There's nobody online.
Online. Okay, great. All right. Start off with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. Okay, let's go through. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for tonight? Okay, any changes, additions, concerns? Okay, no. Can someone make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moves.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed or abstained? Okay, our agenda passes for tonight. And then we need to approve the minutes from last meeting, which is interesting. So our last meeting minutes were the Republic site tour. So someone make a motion to approve the
Motion to approve.
site tour. So, all right, do we have a second? All right, all in favor of last month's meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, our site tour meeting minutes pass. All right, now it's time for public comment.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Mary.
Hello, Sustainability Commission. My name is Mary Richter, and I've lived in Sammamish 25 years. I became a Washington Native Plant Steward in the last cohort group of 2019 and 2020. We study for 100 hours, we do 150 hours with volunteer, and then we go out into the community. And I grew up on a farm, and I'm a farm girl. So I have learned that those weeds that are right there on your neighbor's side, they don't know about the fence line or the boundary, they come over to your property. So it's really important to deal with them. So tonight I'm holding Guide to Noxious and Invasive Weeds. It was one of the little booklets that we were given in King County, Washington. And the front cover, can everybody see the bright yellow?
Mm-hmm.
That is tansy ragwort. So I figured if you can't get something done, try to get it done with one thing. So I'm picking tansy ragwort as my example. One of the reasons is if you read the King County materials, one plant can generate 100,000 seeds up to 150,000 seeds. Those seeds can remain viable in the soils for 10 to 16 years. So if you just do the math, one plant can generate 1 million seeds in 10 years. And if it's the higher end, 150,000 for 16 years, you get 24 million seeds. So every time you drive by one of those and go, oh, we don't have time to deal with it, it generates a lot of seeds. And you can see because where they are, you'll see that they grow in patches. So I have 3 suggestions. I've been at 2 of your other meetings, and Sebastian, I don't know how to say his last name, but he was one of the volunteer leaders when I was getting my Washington Native Plant Steward, and he spoke on native or invasive and noxious weeds as well. The first thing I would recommend is city staff, like the maintenance operations center who they drive around. If they just do one task in one area for a long time, it's too much and the city can't do it. But as they're driving around in June, July, and August in the summer, if they're trained and they know what this looks like, they can pop those weeds out, bag them up, make sure they go into the garbage, not into the yard waste, because then you just send them somewhere else. And I think sometimes they're doing that. I think that's how the control has been. I also used to help. I broke my knee this year, so I haven't done a lot of help. And then if you can't do that, I know the city has different landscape companies that do parts of the landscape in the city. And maybe if one or more of those companies was interested in getting trained properly to know how to do it, and then being on call for something or different spots, I think that could be done maybe even under an existing contract. And then the third thing is whenever there's permitting, like if you drive on Southeast 4th, a couple of the vacant lots have a lot of that have gone brown now, tansy ragwort, and they're not doing their weeds. And I think honestly, if it's vacant land that the city has under permit and you guys have any control, you ought to be able to make them clean up their weeds. And if they can't, then you could also use the landscape version where the landscapers who are trained could go out and do that and then charge back to the people that own that lot. So anyway, maybe it's a wish or a dream, but it's really important to do noxious weeds. And if you guys don't say something and do about it, it'll be really hard. But I think the
10
incoming
seconds,
council-elect is very oriented toward trying to do the right thing for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have time for a question? I have a question for Mary.
Typically for public comment, there aren't back and forth, but if
Okay.
you want to send me the question,
okay.
I can
Perfect.
distribute as necessary. Yeah,
Sure.
thanks, Nick.
Okay, so let's move on to the agenda. So the first item on the agenda is the Republic Services tour that most of us went on last month. So what we're going to do tonight is we'll go around the room for each commissioner that participated. We'll start with Christy, and let's have a discussion just on the experience and what were some of your key takeaways or impactful moments. If you shared information with your family, friends, students, maybe talk about that. And we'll kind of bring, I don't think Mizan was able to attend. Who else was
No,
not?
I was not.
On Brian, yeah. So we can bring both of them up to speed. It was a great tour. You're going to hear kind of what our takeaways were.
Yeah, we missed it.
Yeah. All right, sound good?
Yeah.
Christy, do you want to start?
Sure. I really appreciated the tour. I thought it was awesome. I'm very thankful we had the chance to go in there. And I left feeling very empowered and sort of like, oh my gosh, like, you know, there's not so many rules. Like they sounded, I left feeling like they will take almost anything. I mean, even surprising to me was seeing like the Amazon bags in there. And I'm like, I'm paying for Ridwell. Like, why? I thought that was what you can't put thin bags in and you can't put shopping bags in, but they had the Ridwell. So I left very like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I posted about it like, hey, as we're heading towards the holidays. And one of the questions came back to me asking, I was at the Earth Day, Sammamish Earth Day, and I was told you can't do the clamshell, you can't recycle clamshell plastic. You know, like tomatoes or something comes in, it has the creases. And so I was like, oh, I left feeling like they will take it all. And then I texted, or I LinkedIn your mom. Whatever it is. I messaged her and I'm like, hey, someone's asking about clamshell. I haven't heard back yet. But I'm curious. Like and then I get this in the mail from Sammamish and it's all the rules again. So I'm kind of like, shoot, like I feel like, am I like, I got questions like, really? Like they take all that, Christy? And then I'm like, everything but shoes and the plastic bag. But now I'm feeling like maybe that's false because this is so many rules. So I'm kind of now I'm like feeling like maybe I should take that down. That feeling like, you know, and then the same thing with the green team lead, we're trying to do composting. And again, it's that feeling of like, we have to toss it off. It's contaminated even a little, but I felt at the time that was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping we could have clarification on like this versus, and all these plastics they say they don't take, but at the time I felt like they said they would take everything,
Yeah.
almost anything. So are we able to clarify?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
So I was speaking with Nick just one-on-one about this. Our sustainability kind of page in the monthly newsletter is typically finalized about a month and a half to 2 months in advance before it goes out.
Okay.
So when I was drafting this content for the Sammamish newsletter, I was going based off of information on Republic's website, information I've received at conferences, and kind of what is general knowledge and also provided specifically on Republic's website. So in retrospect, I would have loved to have done the tour before going and creating this article. But I think ultimately the information that's being published out there, you know, from the waste haulers or from community groups, they tend to err on the side of caution. So they're really focused on education. They're focused on getting the best contamination rates and, you know, best practices. So the information that we received on the tour was, it was really educational for me as well, because I was under a lot of the assumptions of the information that is provided in this newsletter is that we want to have our recycling be obviously clean, dry, really focused on recycling those items that are of the highest value and easier to process. So all of this information is still great and relevant, but ultimately the key takeaway that I think a lot of commissioners and I as well got from that tour of Republic was different than maybe the narrative that has been out there and what we've all been learning and taught over the years of we really need to be careful of what we're putting in the recycling. The reality is the recycling facility that we have access to regionally and locally is doing a lot of that work for us, which is really wonderful. And I think if you take that out to a national scale, a lot of these rules are a lot more relevant. So
I think it's lost in the messaging. So the opportunity here, both your inputs is that, and you've got connections obviously to Republic, maybe they can kind of improve how they communicate the recycling streams. Because I think when a lot of people are confused, they just put it in the garbage. Like, well, I'm gonna get in trouble. I put plastic number 5 in my bin when that's not the case from what we heard. So
exactly.
maybe Republic can help people with maybe some clearer messaging on what can be recycled.
Yeah, one comment here is I have not been in the recycling facility, but I have been involved with recycling for a long time. These are general rules, like say 35 miles per hour in the road. If you go 40 miles, your car will not brake, okay, or you will not hit somebody. But that is a speed limit. That's the same way, like if everybody put all the milk, the cans without washing or without, just imagine it will be difficult. But 1 or 2 cans, they're already built into that thing. Like say plastic. If we all try to put plastic in the recycle, the blades will block at some point, the recycling. So the reason they do it is somebody will do that. That does not mean that, if they do it in terms of tons. And if there are few plastics or few bottles or anything that is outside the range, they will process it. But if we think that we can do that and start putting all these things there, it will be difficult for them to handle it.
I don't know. That's not how it came off though. I felt like, oh wow, the sorters are so great now. And so the message as ambassadors, I feel like it needs to be, I took away like, this is awesome. If that's not the case and it's what you're saying, then maybe they shouldn't have said that to us, because I left feeling like we're the ambassadors, like we're going to go out and say recycling all of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I felt it is more like they can handle it all. But then my friend who's asking, well, but they told me at the Earth Day I can't do the clamshell thing, which a lot of things is that clamshell. You know what I'm talking about? That plastic with the gaps and the little creep. So anyway, that's my takeaway. It might get a little
Did they show ultimately how they put it in the high temperature, they melt all these things and things like that?
No, they showed how they group it and then they sell it as a group, I think, to the companies who then do that.
Okay.
So they're more the sorting, and the sorting is really good.
Because ultimately they will melt those things. You just imagine that. In there, if there is a few drop of milk or a few drop of plastic, it is not going to make or break.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I took away was they don't want the thin flimsy films like what you get your produce in at the market.
Yes.
Because that really
That's
that little air blow table doesn't handle that with the darn. It really gums up the works.
and that's the result. That's exactly.
All right. Anything else, Christine?
No, I'm
That's
good.
but-
Thank you.
No, nice to know that just that if anything happens, accidentally, that still they are able to handle it.
But
I think
I think it should be more than just an accident. Like I think
You are saying that is more of a norm.
it's 70% of the stuff that ends at our landfill could have been recycled. So in my mind, that's a messaging problem.
Wow.
70%
Okay.
from our King County landfill could have been recycled. So my sense, I'm like, here I am teaching this to all these kids and families. Like, I want to make sure I'm saying it right, because I don't want them to be like, well, on their website, it doesn't say that. And I'm like,
You were asking me for notes. It's like, I don't know if I have it right. I kept asking Cam more questions like, okay, I think I heard you say this. And that's why I'm saying the clear messaging for Republic would really help.
for our local one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I second that. Rose, you may want to touch base with them and see really what should be done. Because if we have more opportunities to put more, compost into the recycle, by all means, we should do that.
Oh, no, no, I
No.
think those are separate.
Yes,
This is
I know
just
that, but there are
recycling.
certain items that right now we put in compost, we think that you cannot recycle that. Like
Oh,
some dirty, like some of the stuff that still we put in the recycle compost that could be recycled. That's what probably you're saying.
No, like compost to me is all food waste and yard waste. Recycle is like the cans, the paper, the cardboard.
there's compostable utensils, compostable
Oh, yes,
plates and
that I
cups
would.
and all.
No, the
That-
takeout food
Oh,
boxes
yes,
like
yeah.
that.
That's compostable.
Yeah, that is
Yes,
compostable, but
yes.
that could be also recyclable too if they can take.
Oh,
it
I
to
see what you're
state.
saying, if they're taking food and.
Little bit, not, it's not dirty, but anytime there is a food item there, we just put it in the compost. Yeah. But I think that's right that Rose, you may want to talk to them little bit heart to heart and see what is should be the really list for our local.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why we're having this conversation today, is to highlight some of those inconsistencies, how we as a city and you all as commissioners doing some of this outreach can, really streamline our communications, keep the messaging consistent, and what feedback we want to give to our, regional hauler and utility partners, right? They value our feedback just the same way that the city does of residents and those of you who are actually participating in that waste stream. So something else to think about, just highlighting a reminder of that facility. It is very much primarily a sorting facility, and it is one of the more like technologically forward. It has different parts of the sorting system that not every regional sorting facility might have. So it is able to handle a lot more of the products and process those through the sorting than maybe some other facilities in, the greater state or even national scale. So information for recycling for Sammamish and other residents that might be served by Republic, it might be different than if you had a different hauler or lived in a different part of the state or country.
Thank
Brooke,
you.
what were your thoughts, takeaways?
Yeah, so the thing that I heard in the beginning, and I hope that everybody else heard this too, is that Washington State is one of the top 5 states in the nation for recycling. And I thought that was really great. And I think maybe people don't realize that.
Mhm.
So that's a positive message. And the other thing was that I also heard, if you're not sure, put it in the recycling and then we will process it. And at least it didn't go to the landfill, because it might go to the landfill in the end anyway. But at least we have a chance to recycle it. And so that was a big message that I heard. Yeah, if in doubt, you can, you should recycle it.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, I know people who are a little self-defeatist about this because they heard only 5% of plastics recyclable, right? It used to be, we talked about this, that plastics were sent internationally to Asia and they stopped accepting the plastic and then it was winding up in landfills. But what I heard was the number was something like the national recycling rate in the US is like 5%, 5 to 8%, but Washington State was 70 to 80%. I don't remember the upper end number, but
It was high.
it was much
like
higher.
50 or
Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also was so impressed by the scale of it, because they showed us the whole load of recycling that was on in the facility at one time. And they said, yeah, we get 2 of these, we clear out 2 of them in one day.
That's
Wow.
800 tons a
And
day, I
so,
think 7,800 tons. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I
Wow.
thought that's an enormous
That's really
capacity with the sorting machines, combination of the sorting machines and the humans that are working on it. I thought this process really works.
Yeah.
That's what I took away.
That's great.
This great. This last few weeks I was in Jacksonville. I saw that they don't have even a recycle bin. The pickup
Who?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh.
They don't have a recycle bin
That's
even.
sad.
They don't have that concept.
Across the mountains and
Yeah.
they don't have it.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
talking
Go
about
to
that.
Chelan,
So bad.
Yeah.
and we go there and there's no recycling, it's all garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad.
So we are definitely Washington State. Some part of it is definitely advanced.
But why do you think that? Is it because there's not a market in that part of the country for recycling materials? Or there's just no public interest?
It is. They are not as sustainable thought process as we are.
I think it's economics.
Hmm.
And that facility costs a lot of money,
Mhm.
and I think I heard him say they had 77 of them countrywide. I talked to my daughter, who also works for Republic, this weekend. She lives in Bend, and their recycling goes to Salem, to the recycling center there. And they don't take it there. Republic sells that or gives that to some hauler who takes it over the mountains to Salem to be processed. So my guess is, like Chelan, it just costs too much to get it there.
Mhm.
So,
Could
I
be,
mean, you
yeah.
gotta, that place has to make some money or at the least break
Break
even.
And we pay for it, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Our,
they-
this.
They're
culture
making
society
money, don't
here-
worry about that.
Cultural society here is gonna be okay with paying that. That's not true everywhere else.
We pay for the garbage, but comes with the recycle, we don't pay for the recycle. So far I
I don't
know,
think that.
No, you pay for
Garbage.
garbage, recycle, and compost.
Yeah.
just 2 to 3.
It's included in the rate.
It's included in.
That included in the.
Right, it's
yeah.
included in your garbage. rate,
Yeah.
Mhm.
If we didn't have those, our garbage.
That
would
will
go
be
down.
less, okay.
Garbage companies make a very good amount of money. So,
Well,
Be-
it used-
be-
it
because
used to be
they-
controlled by the mafia. You remember,
yes,
a long time ago.
I do.
Firefighting too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, thank you for the update, I learned something new, I wish I could go there.
Oh, there's more coming. Hang on.
More people.
Tim?
I mean, my two best ones were already taken, but I definitely walked away thinking, when in doubt, recycle, where in the past it was when in doubt, throw it away.
Yeah.
I think I have a pretty good idea still of what is recyclable and what isn't, but now when I'm like, I don't know, I'll rather throw it there. Then put it in the trash can and knowing they'll take it to the dump if it doesn't work for them. So I told, my whole family about that on Thanksgiving and all that as we were cleaning up. And then the size and scale of it, I was shocked by. The other thing minor takeaway that I thought was funny and amusing to myself was automation doesn't solve everything. They had these hilarious grab, pick up, shoot air guns
Yeah.
that were trying to pick out pieces of plastic off this belt, and one half was the machines and another half was the humans, and the guns would miss 30% of the time. They couldn't get it, and then 50% of the time when they got it and they were trying to shoot the air out over the wall, it missed and just fell right back on the thing and went back the other way. And I just was watching this. I must have watched it for like 5 minutes. It was so fascinating about how bad it was.
That wasn't.
Yeah, and like that, where some of our jobs are safe anyway. In the machines, because that was just a failure. And they were telling me that they've been running that experiment for months, and I was like, why? In my head, this is obviously a failure.
We're getting paid.
Which was maybe somebody's getting paid. But that was my little takeaway. Like, there's you can't automate everything. So
Thank you.
Steve?
Well, I got you one better on the, if in doubt, recycle. If you're doubt, it should be recycled, compost, and think about garbage third.
Mhm.
So I put my cans out tonight and my garbage can is really empty. The other thing I realized is that they like polyethylene milk bottles and they like aluminum. They don't care too much for glass. Because there wasn't not a big market for glass. So you might think about when you go to the store, and I know a lot of people they don't like to buy stuff in plastic. They like to buy it in a glass bottle. They think it's purer or something. I'm thinking of a flat of water you get at Costco in those plastic bottles. What was I wrote some notes down. Yeah, that was probably in addition to the other points that have been made, my biggest takeaway. And the fact that they processed like 1.6 million pounds in 2 ships every day.
Wow.
They get stuff that's barged down from Alaska. It's just not local. It comes from all over.
Wow. So one thing I can tell about between glass and plastic, the glass, you don't need to worry about microplastics coming to the water or anything, liquid or meal, something like that. But that's why probably people prefer glass than
Well,
But glass is, as I hear that it is difficult, it is relatively difficult.
all their glass comes broken.
Yes,
You throw it in the truck,
yes,
and when they compact all that mess, every bottle they stiff, you may have put the bottle in the recycling
Yeah.
hole, but by the time it gets to their center, it's broken.
So you just said it gets stuck in the cardboard and the
so it's not a good idea then to.
The market's not great. They can't
Yeah.
sell it. Or
Yeah.
They sell it.
That was, they have an issue.
So in the
market-
sorting facility, they can sort out the glass.
Well, they can sort
We
it,
can sort
yeah,
it, but it's still.
It's not the idea.
yeah.
Like it's still better for it to be going through that system than just ending up in landfill, but it's still not an ideal system for it.
Basically, they use humans, they use this machine that Tim was talking about that's not too good. They use gravity and they use air to sort various materials at various stages.
And magnets. And there's some
Yeah.
magnets in there. somewhere.
Well, yeah, they said they had magnets, but what do we throw away that's steel?
You had a lot of questions about
cut
that,
off all
didn't
time?
you?
Hey, the answer I got back, I didn't sit too well, but I wasn't gonna push it.
Yeah, I asked about that. They take metal. So he said
Yeah.
something like, doorknob size,
Small stuff.
not like appliances, things like that. but-
Not appliances, not like large sheet metal.
Yeah.
But if it's, aluminum's not metallic, titanium's not metallic. The only thing that the magnet's gonna give is gonna be like a can of beans or a can of Campbell's soup or something like that. It's got some steel in it.
Mhm.
Any other metal they throw away that's magnetic is pretty spendy, like nickel or chrome or cobalt. That's about the list of magnetic materials.
Thank you.
Swan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, one of the takeaways, with regards to stuff like mixed products. So like if you have like the spiral bound notebooks, or if you have like staples or tape on things, that's not usually an issue for their system. Like it's better if there's staples. You don't want to just toss in, obviously, because it's way too small. But like if something has staples in it, that's okay within the system. Or stuff like that spiral bound notebook. It's better if it is separated out before it's tossed in, but the system can handle stuff like that still. So still better for that to be recycled than thrown away. Stuff like duct tape, not good for their system, but most other tape they said would be fine. So, because that was one thing that I remember hearing in the past, like pull tape off of stuff before you recycle it. Pull duct tape off of stuff before you recycle it, but regular tape should be fine for it. And then like with regards to stuff like contamination, they absolutely can handle a small amount of contamination or even a larger one. Like if it's a significant amount of contamination, it's going to slow down the system and it's going to be a lot harder for them to process it. So if it's just a jumble of stuff ended up in the recycling, they might not be able to do as much for it. Like that might end up needing to go stuff like that might end up needing to just be tossed. But even if it is a somewhat larger percentage, it can be like they can sort through that. Because the main thing that came up for that, I mentioned briefly earlier before we started, back when I was at Tesla STEM, when I was on the green team that we had there, one of the things that we were told is if there's any contamination in the compost, it just has to be trashed, or any contamination in the recycling just has to be trashed. Which is, it's possible that was the case then, and that was true based on the systems that were in place then, but it's not the case now, or at the very least with this, like anything going to this facility, it's not the case. So that's something we want to try and communicate to schools. And actually, if that's anything that you've heard about, like with regards to contamination for green teams at schools, like an amount of contamination is obviously less contamination is better, but it's okay if there is some.
Yeah, I think that's like still a problem at our school, or what our teacher says that if like we have too much like contaminants in the compost and the public service just doesn't come to our school or doesn't just take the compost from our school, because we had that problem where they just
Interesting.
Did they really not pick it up?
because of there's just too much contaminant that they
That would be interesting, I guess, between compost and recycling, because it's definitely the case for recycling, but obviously compost is going through different systems.
I said compost too, though, because you had a ton of questions about composting. And he was like, send it. One thing in there.
Keep sending it, but
Yeah,
apparently
but that's for stuff that's for compost stuff in recycling. You're talking about compost itself, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But that's
Or
that's-
either
no, I
way,
think
because
your
we,
question
yeah, either
was-
way, we compost, recycle, and have garbage, and
But it-
our custodian will toss it if it has that.
But compost isn't going compost isn't necessarily going through the same facility.
No,
It's not
it is
gonna-
not.
So
I
that,
do want to go to the compost.
so that might be something to follow.
Yeah,
up
we should.
with.
That's
That might be something to follow up on with regards to composting is if like how much like if they have any different guidelines for contamination.
If we're interested in composting, we can talk about this for next year, but Queen City Farms landfill is just down the road in Hobart, and what's the name of the compost facility there?
Cedar Grove? Is that
Cedar
where-
Grove. Cedar Grove's based there next to the landfill, and they do all
Is that where
composting there.
Yeah,
Where
and the
dam-
next door is the Cedar Hill landfill,
Yeah.
King County, so
Yeah.
it could be covered in the same transport
Mhm.
facilities.
Yeah.
So that might be good to follow up on so that we can communicate about both of those at the same time. It's like, good we know for recycling, a decent amount of contamination, you can still handle it, but being able to know about that for compost would be good as well.
It's actually a 3-for-1 because Boeing has a remediation project right next to it too. So if you're interested in remediation, see all three in the same visit.
Yeah.
I think what would be helpful for me, since I'm and out of school, but also this, and maybe for everybody, is if they created a special one for us, like to back up what we're saying. You know what I mean? Like because if we're saying it and then we're presenting this, it just causes confusion. You know, and it makes me feel a little bit like I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So I think if they could do like a flyer, you know, that we could have for our own.
Take this one.
I don't know. What does that say?
Among other things, this is number 5 is okay to recycle. But this is one of the things I was linked in from the ones that Rose sent out. Like they have a page with a bunch of flyers on it that doesn't necessarily like fully contradict what we have here, and it doesn't have everything that we've talked about.
Okay.
But it is slightly more updated for some things at least. So
When was that sent?
it was in the follow-up email that Rose sent. One of the things I was linked was to
I thought I looked at all this.
Holiday Guides Recycling Simplified. They have a bunch of different flyers on that page. I don't know how those are or would be getting out to people, but that's something we could potentially point towards for here's a little bit of like more updated guidelines to support what we're saying.
Okay. What I saw in that wasn't what we heard. So I don't know which one that is. The ones I got are a little different.
I would just suggest that whatever is on Republic website is what they want publicly to be
Yes.
out there.
So that's
And that is
different.
contradicting what you all have heard, but
Yes.
they have a very significant comms and public affairs
Yeah.
team and all that kind of stuff. So I do think Rose can get some clarity on that, but I would just suggest that if that's what they're publicly facing, putting out there, that's their messaging.
Okay.
And we've got Earth Day coming up that Republic participates. I assume they'll be there again this year. So
Yeah.
be good to level set with whoever's coming from Republic. So if we get questions at our booth about recycling,
Yeah.
we can answer them or send them over to the Republic, talk to the right person.
Yeah.
Great
This
idea.
might be an issue with the Republic's official position and the fellow that was running that facility.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think you
Yeah.
Yeah.
hit
I was
it
thinking
on the
about that.
So you're
nose.
saying it might be like a local or a
No,
facility based.
he wants,
More
he
general.
wants stuff
Yeah.
in his machine. And he doesn't want you thinking about, or he wants to make it kind of easy for you to think about throwing stuff in that blue bin so that he gets his hands on it.
Mhm.
And it sounds like he loves what he does and he's proud of his
Yeah.
facility,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I think something to think about again with the messaging is ultimately a lot of companies, organizations are going to put out, you know, the best practices, the best case scenario. They're going to provide more information than maybe you might provide having one-on-one conversation with one of your fellow residents. If you're trying to distill, you know, one message to someone you're talking to at Earth Day, hey, when in doubt with plastics, as long as it's not thin plastic film, there's really great recycling facilities and sorting facilities in our region, and it's probably going to get sorted versus the actual guide that's on Republic's site that breaks down the different types of plastic, you know, maybe talks about end of life potential for different types of plastic compared to cardboard or paper. Ultimately, you know, that is what they specialize in, and that is the information that, like Rachel said, they are wanting to share out to their community and customers. So that's part of the reason, again, we're having the conversation today is like, how do we pare this down and how do we get the most impact as we're quote unquote changing hearts and minds, right? If someone is scared to recycle at all and they don't want to recycle or they don't want to have to put too much thought into it, what a great opportunity to have that initial conversation with, hey, why don't you just try throwing out your harder plastics? We've got really great recycling sorting facilities in our area. Versus, you know, someone who might really want that checklist and be a little bit more meticulous with it is going to really benefit from those specific charts and resources on the website.
So
So
harder plastic, you mean like buckets and toys and things like that?
meaning milk jugs
Well-
to like some of the thinner plastics.
But I've had that question. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what do you, plastics, like, can I put a bucket in the recycle bin? I don't think so. I think it's more like consumer, like consumables, right?
Mhm.
Containers, food packaging. We didn't ask that question, but I assume they don't take.
It's like.
They do take buckets and chairs, plastic
We
chairs.
did ask about stuff like that, and it was like it's like you do have to like schedule ahead for that pickup.
Oh.
But as a part of your regular rate, I think it was you have 5 free pickups per year.
That's
And then
right.
you can do it. You can pay for additional ones.
Okay.
So it's things like that, like hard plastic, like larger hard plastics. You can't just put into your bin, but if
Pick
you
it
let them know, hey, I have this here to be picked up, they can still take care of it. It just has
That's
to, it just has to be planned.
Yeah.
Um,
Which adds to the complexity, right?
Yeah, waste stream is quite complicated, and you know all of the different sectors of the climate action plan that we've been talking about have those nuances.
Yeah.
So that's why taking tours like this, having these follow-up conversations, and having more resources as well as some key messaging is where we're going to really see that impact in the community.
So, all right, I'll close out discussion. I think everybody covered everything that's on my list except for Tim. You mentioned the robotics versus humans.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody caught this, but Cameron said that the average tenure the tenure of people working in the facility was something like 17 years.
Wow.
So they have really
Seriously?
dedicated. Yeah, he says they're paid very well. They're very dedicated. I was really impressed. I would think that job would just be turnovers. People would stay for maybe a year, a couple of years, move on, but that wasn't the case.
That's great.
Yeah,
they get more breaks than some of my friends who work retail.
yeah.
Oh, they get more
They
breaks than
have a 30-minute lunch and 2 15-minute breaks across their shift, which is more than some of my friends who are working at our retail shifts.
Okay.
Ms. Zahn and Brian, did you guys have any more questions? for
No,
the
thank you.
group?
I really
Just-
appreciate all the updates and I'm learning new things from them. Thank you.
Yeah, I have no other questions.
Yeah.
What we did mention was they have a tour center. So we met in the tour center where they have like a mock-up of like one of the waste conveyance systems. They've got the whole operational process flow charted out on the wall. So you can, for kids, they don't take kids into the recycling facility. So they have all the discussions there in the tour center, which I thought was very impressive. They put a lot of money and resources into that.
So in the tour center, you can walk in or you need to.
I think you have to have an appointment.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't just walk in.
But they're very willing to work with the community, and thank you, Swan, for calling out. I did send out a pretty comprehensive email as follow-up for the meeting that included some pictures of
Yes,
some of the
yes.
diagrams
Yes.
that they had available.
Yes, yes, you did a great job.
Awesome. Great. Any last thoughts on this? I appreciate the suggestions for future tours for next year. That was kind of my follow-up question to all of you is what similar tours are we interested in? It sounds like focusing maybe on a composting facility would be a good next step. If there's other ideas that you have, definitely let me know. We'll be kind of looking at the work plan at our next meeting in January so we can finalize it at that point, and then I'll work on getting it scheduled amongst our busy spring and summer event season.
Yeah, so I don't think Boeing will allow us to see any kind of remediation.
It depends. If we were interested, I could talk to.
Yeah, I think that will be good because so Rose, you can talk to King County, or if you need any contacts, let me know because I work on that. Sometime I do some water resources work in that Cedar Hill site, so I'm familiar with that site and some of the people.
Sure, thank you.
So if you need any contact, let me know. Quincy Farm, I don't know them.
So you've got Queen City
City.
Farms is the landfill,
Yeah,
and but next to Queen City Farms was a landfill that was used in like the 1960s, 1970s. A lot of companies sent their hazardous waste there. And the hazardous waste actually leached down into the groundwater. And that's the remediation project that's going on right now that Boeing is leading. There were other companies that sent waste there in the past. And so that's something that's interesting to the group. There's not a lot to see.
Then the compost.
Then the composting facility in Cedar Grove. I've never been to that one. So I'm really interested to see. I mean, obviously we send wood waste there, but there's other compostables like pizza boxes, other types of materials that get composted. And what's their rate of contamination? How does their process work? Who do they sell the compost to? Those sorts of things.
We buy
We
that.
pay for it to go away and then we buy it back.
All the garden soil and all these things
Right.
coming, that's come from them.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think this at least, I'm not sure in the remediation side, there is nothing much really you can show. It is because.
That might be outside of the scope of the climate action plan as well.
There's a groundwater pump and treat system.
Pump and treat. But I think these two, compost and the solid waste, the landfill side. I think landfill is also where all the garbage ultimately go there, So that will be something. I can tell you this place is the smell is very bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling you
Wear a mask or something.
both of these places, you have to have some kind of, thing to, but these are something lot to learn.
If you've never been to a landfill, then you appreciate that all the chemicals that go into our daily products that wind up in the landfills, well, they have to be managed, right? So that leaches out. And so the landfills have to be designed so that the 50 years ago, landfills were not designed thinking about that, right? And that's created like Superfund sites and major cleanup projects. But the ones today, they've got to they have to understand what waste streams are coming in and make sure that they have systems that can capture the chemicals and water that's leaching through and then treat it and then be able to discharge clean water under a permit. If that's something that's interested to the group, I mean, that's the part a lot of people aren't really thinking about when they just toss something in the garbage. Like, well, there's a lot of chemicals that go into those products. How's that managed at the landfill? What are the risks?
If we work with the landfill side, King County, they will give us a tour and they will tell that thing and it should not take more than an hour or so to go through they have their vehicles, they will not allow you to drive inside. They will give their vehicles and they will take us and they will give a tour.
Have you been to one of these stores previously?
I do as part of the project, not as a outside people,
Okay. Yeah, well, this is something I'll look into for our offsite tour again for next year's work schedule. Again, welcome other suggestions and we can kind of revisit this conversation at the January meeting.
Seems good.
Great.
All right, let me go down the list. So next up, we have the King County Cities Climate Collaborative Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Reports.
Presentation. All right, so we have been talking about the release of these reports for the last couple of months while they've been under development. And we did get the published inventory. So I'll just be walking us through some of the key findings, some of the data from these reports. I don't expect you all to have read through all of the pages of the reports, but you do have time, or maybe you already have read kind of the summary, executive summary of each, and skimmed through some of the data and read some of those conclusions as well. So as this commission is well aware, greenhouse gases are the primary cause of recent climate change and associated impacts. And to avoid those serious impacts, we need major reductions in greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years. And measuring and understanding these emissions is important for our government operations and community as a whole. Next slide. So, why is that sizing? That does not look how mine looks. Might be a problem. Do you want to try reopening that real quick? Because I have a lot of diagrams. And then download this as.
What's wrong with her?
PDF real quick.
The later ones look alright.
Yeah, resizing is wrong on that image.
I think it's just that one.
Just that one?
No,
Okay,
The rest
let's try.
the rest of them that we can see on the sidebar look alright.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna send you a PDF just in case.
Okay.
But we will continue as planned.
Girl.
Okay, great. Okay, so these new greenhouse gas emissions data sets were commissioned by the King County Cities Climate Collaboration, otherwise known as the K4C. This is a coalition of local governments that work together to accelerate climate action across our region. The city of Sammamish joined in 2015 and signed the K4C joint commitments that same year. The joint commitments were then refreshed in late 2019, which is the same year as the baseline analysis for the data for our climate action plan. And Sammamish did sign the updated joint commitments at that time. K4C partners work together to reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions by sustainably increasing mobility, investing in renewable energy, promoting clean energy use in buildings and vehicles, and expanding farm and forest production across the greater King County. Greenhouse gas emissions inventories help communities estimate sources and amounts of emissions generated by activities such as driving, energy use, and waste disposal to evaluate progress and plan for the future. Next slide, please. Just see. So this new inventory released by the King County Executive Climate Office and prepared by Cascadia Consulting Group focused on data from 2023 and also updated data updated the data through 2007 to align with updated methodology and industry best practices. This project included the creation of 2 reports at the county level and a 3rd report that was specific to K4C partner cities. The first county report measured geographic emissions at the King County scale, and geographic emissions are emissions generated within the boundaries of King County by community activities. The second county level report focused on consumption-based emissions, which include emissions from all goods and services consumed in the county by households, businesses, governments, and visitors. I'm going to touch on these 2 county reports first and explain more about the differences between the 2 as well as their key findings as they provide important context for the Sammamish city level geographic inventory report. Next slide. So there are two major ways to measure how much greenhouse gases our region is emitting. The graphic to the right shows the differences and overlap between these 2 inventory types. As you can see, geographic and consumption-based inventories are complementary and partially overlapping. Both of these emissions inventories consider emissions from household use of energy and fuels, such as gasoline, electricity, and natural gas, as well as the emissions associated with goods and services produced within the county and consumed by the county residents. Geographic-based inventories look at emissions within the boundaries due to local activities, including data from activities like transportation, powering and heating buildings, and local business operations. The geographic inventory also considers emissions generated locally by visitors. Geographic emissions inventories do not account for upstream emissions from goods and services consumed within the community. And this is the type of inventory that is used by most cities for their climate action plans, as its data sources can be more easily influenced, tracked, and compared year over year. On the other hand, consumption-based inventories estimate, keyword there, estimate, greenhouse gas emissions associated with the total final demand or consumption of goods and services within a community, including consumption by households, governments, and business investments in capital goods such as building construction. Consumption-based inventories include upstream emissions for activities like food consumption and production and transportation of goods and services. So this inventory also considers emissions from goods and services that are imported into the country and into the county specifically. This type of report requires more data assumptions and estimation than a geographic inventory. So the emissions are typically a lot higher than a geographic greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Next slide. So for that reason, we're going to start with the consumption-based report. King County's consumption-based emissions were 47.3 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, primarily derived from household consumption, with smaller portions coming from businesses and government. Gasoline, building energy use, such as electricity and natural gas, construction, meat and dairy, and furnishings and equipment are some of the largest sources of emissions covered in this inventory. Most emissions either derive from the use of fossil fuels and energy, or from the production of food, good, and services, and the associated transportation. Most use phase emissions occur in state, while most production phase emissions occur in the rest of the United States or world. This model relies on significant assumptions to scale statewide government and business emissions data to the county level, which may not reflect actual local activities. As a result, this inventory is primarily helpful in identifying the relative sizes of different sources of emissions. While overall consumption-based emissions have increased, primarily due to population growth, King County's emissions per household have decreased since the baseline year for the county analysis, which was 2007. This is driven by a combination of declining emissions intensity for food, goods, and services, reductions in energy and automobile usage, and improvements in fuel economy and energy efficiency. The household characteristics used to estimate consumption include income, household size, home size by number of rooms, home ownership rates, vehicle ownership, and college education. It's worth noting that dense urban areas typically have lower per household emissions on consumption-based inventories, even at higher incomes, and more suburban areas like Sammamish tend to have higher emissions. However, lower income rural areas tend to have lower emissions. I'll pause here for questions. That was a lot.
I just got a question. So the total there, the million metric tons carbon CO2 equivalents. What does equivalents mean when you're talking about CO2?
So looks like Steve's got a good answer. I will briefly touch on that and then Steve, if you have anything to add.
All the other greenhouse gases besides CO2,
Okay.
they calculate what the well, like methane, for instance.
Yep.
They calculate how much methane would be equivalent to a pound of CO2.
Okay.
So they include sulfur hexafluoride, all the fluorocarbons and methane, and any gas that's going to be
So it's a normalized to a CO2.
Propane,
yeah,
oil
they
heating.
basically it's a normalization.
Normalization.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
It's so that you can compare apples to apples,
Yeah,
despite
yeah.
having emissions come from many different sources and sectors.
Obviously, the biggest swinger is CO2,
Great.
and the next biggest is methane, and they probably make up 95+% of that number.
Thank you.
So the 410A that leaks out of your air conditioner is one of those. Anything that will absorb infrared radiation and basically keep the what we radiate from the Earth from going into outer space and warming up the planet is going to be in that calculation.
It's in the greenhouse gas bucket, but it's
Yes.
normalized to CO2.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the industry standard for greenhouse gas emissions inventories.
Yep.
So it takes a lot of math. And there are different emissions factors for each of those gases. Any other questions on this slide?
Yeah. Not that you have this at the tip of your tongue, but what's the population increase from 2007 to 2023 for King County? Is it 4.5%?
Definitely not. I believe I remember from reading this, it was a 25% increase.
So
that seems really high.
That's pretty good. That if that many more people moved in and the total only increased less than 5%. Okay.
Yeah, and that is called out in the report. They mention, our population has been expanding, and so actually looking at per capita emissions is a good way to kind of level set. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the same thing. In the doc, they called out, we call it carbon intensity at work, but per capita here, it's actually going down.
Mhm.
So people are making the right choices. but our population is growing, so emissions go up, which is good and bad. You still gotta get to zero somehow, and so eventually I'll have a carbon intensity of zero.
So Rose, this percentage, those are just estimate, or how do you do, or do you do some scientific measurement?
So the percentages that are presented in these slides are pulled directly from the report itself. When we get into the Sammamish specific report, there was a little bit of math that I had to do, which I'll explain as we get into it. But there's overall emissions, which we're looking at the county level. And then there's also a breakdown of core emissions, which is looking more specifically at sectors that the city has more control over, or that we have better data for and are kind of the industry standard. So core emissions are typically buildings and energy, transportation, and solid waste. Some of the kind of additional sectors that are either choosing to be included or excluded from greenhouse gas emissions, depending on the organization and the purpose of the data, are numbers like aviation, refrigerants, industrial processes that are kind of distilled down from those either countywide or statewide data sets that we may not have Sammamish specific information.
And how those data are generated?
This report?
No, yes, how the data is then, like say, if I say that in King County, we have from transportation, like from aviation, there is 14%, say.
Yeah, so
How did they measure that, or they are estimating it?
So it really depends on the sector. In these emissions inventory reports, they have appendices that include methodology for every single one of these: transportation, services, food, and they talk about where they're getting their data sets from, what assumptions are being made, and what estimations are being made as well. There is a certain level of error to all of this data, but that is ultimately, these are the rounded, industry best practice methodology.
And Rose, is that data measured to like scope 3 emissions, or is it consistent across all these different industries and how they're measuring emissions down the supply chain? Or
they do their best to keep it as consistent as possible. This consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions inventory is looking more at those scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, versus the geographic inventory is more scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Yeah, so that's why we're kind of looking at the consumption-based emissions inventory. You'll see that number 47.3 million. That goes down by about half when we look at the greenhouse gas emissions inventory from the geographic-based scale. Next slide, please. So, for example, if you look on the top left of that graphic, you'll see the total greenhouse gas emissions inventory from the geographic inventory is 24.2 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So this graphic provides a visual representation of the breakdown of the geographic emissions across the county. And as you can see, buildings and transportation are the county's biggest source of emissions at 44%, and then combining transportation and aviation, 44% respectively. So in 2023, the county's residents, businesses, employees, and visitors produced just over 24 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this equates to roughly 10.3 metric tons per capita in 2023. The total geographic emissions increased 4% compared to the 2007 baseline, and then decreased 8% in recent years from 2019 to 2023. You may recall the Sammamish Climate Action Plan is based on a 2019 baseline. Some of these county numbers did date back to 2007 as well. Per capita, greenhouse gas emissions have also declined over this time. So again, looking at that trend, that's really great from an individual level. Means a lot of folks are making the right choices despite the overall population in the county going up. So looking specifically at the built environment, overall emissions have decreased 3% since 2019 at a county scale. Specifically breaking that down, emissions from electricity have declined 23%, while natural gas emissions have increased by about 25% over that same time period.
Do we know why? I don't know why the electricity went down, but why'd the natural gas go up?
Yeah, so we have heard that the county is working on an attribution analysis to give us a little bit more background. But definitely, like you mentioned, closure of Puget Sound Energy's coal-fired power plants have reduced emissions from electricity production pretty significantly, even as overall usage has increased. And then an assumption is increases in natural gas emissions are, driven primarily by commercial and industrial consumption.
Okay,
And then some of those times of the year where we have really hot or really cold spells and folks who are heating their house with natural gas are using a lot during that time. When you see those weather fluctuations, you're going to see those natural gas emissions increase as well.
I do have a question.
Yeah, of course.
I'm looking here at the transportation because buildings and transportation are the largest sources of emissions for King County. And we see that King County has been working on public transportation, in other words, light rail expansion, for example. Is that fall in the transportation on-road vehicles category? Like, in other words, if people are getting, using their cars less and the light rail more, for example, is that like the on-road vehicle part, or that's not the aviation, marine, and equipment one?
Yeah, so typically transit is included in the transportation on-road vehicles. And basically what you're seeing there is the emissions factors from, cars maybe decreasing and transit maybe increasing a little bit, but then that per capita emissions and also total emissions are going to be going down because you're having, in an ideal scenario, less cars on the road and only a little bit more transit.
so for on-road cars, trucks, transit, the only metric there is gasoline usage. Is that correct? Because transit is electric, but do they count the carbon intensity of the electricity they had to use to run that train in transit, or do they count it in electricity?
I would have to look back through the methodology. That's a really good question. I know they have emissions factors for electric vehicles, for example, so I would assume it's a similar methodology for electric
Because
transit.
my guess is in transit and also for our on-road vehicles in the city, we don't count electric charging and the carbon intensity of the PSE energy they get. We're only looking at gasoline burning.
I know they also, I believe, cross-reference data sets from the Department of Licensing. So they're looking at vehicle registrations, they're looking at mileage.
Are they including that in transit, or are they including that in their electricity usage?
That I'm not sure about.
Because, our little bar graph where we've got vehicles, electricity, and that electricity that we use to charge our cars, that you use to charge your Rivian, is in that electricity bar. It's not in the vehicle miles bar.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I would assume with a consulting firm such as Cascadia that does a lot of this work throughout the region, they're making sure that things aren't being double counted and they are kind of sorting and making sure that data is attributed to the right sector.
I suspect the way Cascadia gets the electricity usage is they just dial up Seattle City Light, Puget Sound Energy, whoever else provides electricity in the county, and say, how many kilowatt hours did you sell and what's your carbon intensity?
Yeah.
They just do the multiplication.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. But some of those are coming from hydro, so it is less carbon dense.
No, they've got it. According by state law, all these public utilities have to report their carbon intensity to Department of Commerce, I believe.
Yeah.
And that includes a mix of their coal, gas, wind, solar, hydro, you name it.
Yes.
Okay.
Nuclear too.
Yeah, I think the coal is the dirtiest source, but if it is like solar or wind or hydro, even nuclear, those are more cleaner.
Yeah, and if you look at PSE's carbon footprint versus Seattle City Light, that there's a 100x difference.
Yes.
Okay, looking at the bottom of this graphic here, I just want to make a note that this countywide geographic inventory also includes estimates for forest and tree growth related carbon sequestration. I just want to note that these estimates are shown separately from the emission sources and are not subtracted from the overall emissions inventory totals. It's really just kind of a visual representation and separate data analysis of how much carbon is being stored in forests and soils. The Sammamish Climate Action Plan does not include this data, but at the county scale, it's interesting to see, and they do have a breakdown of that data report as part of the geographic inventory.
It'd be interesting to see the intersection of the urban forest management plan the city has and either maintaining or increasing the canopy relative to these decreasing statistics. I mean, we're only a small part of King County, right? But do other cities have urban forest management plans as well?
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
our surrounding cities do. Accounting for carbon storage, like you mentioned, it's really hard to do on a smaller scale for a city. It really doesn't change too much from year to year, even with events like the bomb cyclone. And because a lot of these trees, take a very long time to grow, and there's some problems across the industry with carbon storage being double, triple, quadruple counted. And folks, planting a tree and then attributing how much carbon that tree might sequester over its whole lifetime to that same year that they're planting the tree, and then continuing to double count. So we're really looking at, obviously, canopy cover as a whole is important, but when we're looking at our climate action plan data and moving that needle, we're really looking at the tangible, vehicles miles traveled, the electricity and natural gas being consumed by our residents.
So it's more behavioral and operational changes versus offsets.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So I just did a quick little calculation. Supposedly a mature tree will sequester about 50 pounds of carbon a year. Take that number and divide it by 50. That's 250 million trees in King County, roughly.
Probably kind of more than just trees. So.
Trees are the big.
Trees in the big,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot
I have
of
no
them.
idea if that's reasonable enough.
I have no idea. I have no idea at all.
Yeah. Rose, one thing that for the land use, you have a 6% increase. It is due to cutting trees due to land use, or?
I believe with land use, it's looking at kind of at a county scale, agriculture and tree cover. So tree cover is a little bit covered in land use, but it's also looking at development, repurposing sites that may be replanted or may be used for future development. So it does account for some of the overall emissions, but ultimately land use is focused a little bit more on agriculture and trees versus, or like developed versus forested areas.
Okay.
Yeah. So you will see that a little bit on the total inventory, but when you're looking just at trees overall and you're accounting for that carbon offset, that's what that bottom part of the diagram is
And a
referring
lot
to.
of people want farmers to do no-till farming, because when they till, they release a lot of the stored carbon in the ground.
Interesting.
So that may be a part of that number.
Yeah. And we do have areas that are dedicated to agriculture across the county, but ultimately that is not as relevant in Sammamish. So again, this is the county level, and then we'll get into Sammamish next. Any other questions on this before we move on to Sammamish specific inventories? Okay, again, I encourage you all, this is just really the high level data points from this report. They really do go, thanks, Rachel. They do go more in depth on each of these sectors and talk about some of the trends and what methodology and data is being used to get those final numbers. Next slide, please. Okay, on to Sammamish. So just like the county geographic inventory, the Sammamish city level geographic inventory includes energy, transportation, solid waste, as well as other emissions from the activities of City of Sammamish's residents, employees, and visitors. Please note that this updated report has several methodological differences between the current inventory and previous inventories. Mostly things like emissions factors, updated industry best practice methodology, and this has led to changes in the total greenhouse gas emissions reported. This is why they did some of the backdating of their data, and the values reflected in this inventory report for 2023, and then also update previous inventory years for the city, going back as far as 2015. Using best practice current methodology. So if you read the report, you probably noticed that there is an analysis of overall emissions, as well as data broken down by core emissions, which I mentioned previously. Focusing on these core emissions removes aviation and refrigerants from the equation, which is most relevant to the Sammamish Climate Action Plan implementation. Evaluating progress based on core emissions data aligns with methodology commonly used by other local governments, as these sectors are what the city has the most influence over. For example, if you look at the report, total community-wide GHG emissions, so not just core emissions, showed aviation as 25% of Sammamish emissions, which skews the breakdown of these other sources for the city. So we're specifically focused on core emissions in the presentation today, but if you read the report, you'll see there's analysis and data for total Sammamish emissions distilled down from the county. As you can see from this table, core emissions are steadily declining with varying.
Does that mean we were just allocated some of King County's aviation?
That is exactly what that means.
Got it.
Yeah. So that data was not necessarily specific to Sammamish, but was extrapolated down based on income, household size, and visitor data from CTAC.
Yeah, that strike to me when I was reading that summary, like 25%. So essentially from CTAC, the number of flights and things like that plane goes, they just distribute that along that area. But that may be plus or minus, depending on if we are not on the flight path, then our amount of emissions should be less.
Yeah.
For the city, but they don't go to that detail. It is just a gross. They just distribute it around through. I believe based on the geographic area.
But
No,
beyond that is income.
It's not.
Because
They distribute it.
They did a study. I can't tell you who they is. I'd have to go back and look. And it included, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 people. They surveyed people that came through CTAC. They asked them where they lived. Are they residents here? Are they leaving? Or are they returning? So it's effectively address based. And they found out that about 42% of the people, I believe these numbers are correct, my mind is a little fuzzy, that go through CTAC, either leaving or returning, live here. Not in Sammamish, but live in the greater 4-county area.
Some zip codes.
And they parsed it out to various cities. And I think they did that based on income. So for instance, on a per capita basis, we get more of a hit than say the Renton or Tukwila or Algona Pacific or someplace like that, because we're a wealthier city. But it is based on an understanding of how many people do live here versus how many people just come in and visit.
So they allocate based on the people taking those flights?
Yes.
Okay, like from where those people come and contribute to that.
Yeah, so they're basically figuring that.
But that does not reflect, what is the Sammamish air quality or something like that. Because from this report, I want to learn that how is our air quality, how we are, generating less greenhouse gas.
In the climate action plan we've got, aviation wasn't included. It was just scope 1, scope 2 plus. It was excluded because aviation is effectively a scope 3 value.
But remember, this isn't about our air quality. It's about our emissions.
Our contribution to them.
Contribution to the overall.
Yeah.
Right. So we probably have higher aviation travel than other cities, right? But we also probably have better air quality, right?
More industry here.
And yet, then the map in the report, right? This community uses more GHG resources than a more urban area, right? So there are all of these different.
Interesting. It's so
Yeah.
interesting they do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it
They're
is more
tracking, like, light.
behavioral than the true air quality. Like how we live, how we,
It's our overall contribution to the emissions.
That's
It's not air
interesting.
quality.
Thank you.
I do actually have a question to this. We're talking about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Can somebody just define that quickly? I
Buy,
think
burn,
half of us know.
buy,
Understand that.
burn, buy and burn are scope 1 and scope 2. If you burn it, like gasoline in your gas tank, or you buy it, like natural gas in your furnace or electricity in your house, those are scope 1, scope 2. The
Another,
truck that brought the groceries to the QFC would be considered scope 3. At least as far as it not being in the city of Sammamish. Once it crosses in the city of Sammamish, it's now part of our.
yeah, another way to think about it is scope 1 is direct emissions from like ownership or your own consumption. Scope 2 is indirect emissions, so like purchased energy and electricity, and then scope 3 is kind of the transport and production of those items outside. So if you have, a paper mill in King County, those emissions are ultimately going to be scope 1 for the people that are involved in the paper mill, and the county is going to be responsible for those emissions. If you're buying the paper, that's a scope 1 emission for you. Scope 2 emission is the emissions from the paper mill operating in the county. Scope 3 emissions would be if you're buying your paper from North Dakota or something like that.
Or you're buying your apples from some orchard in eastern
Apples.
Washington, and you're turn those emissions are the tractor the guy drives around.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or if you do the DoorDash, the guy delivers you, then that is scope 3.
Yeah,
His emission is scope 3
for us, yeah.
for us. Yeah.
Okay. So really quick, just finishing up the commentary on this one. So core emissions are steadily declining with varying progress amongst those 3 core sectors of built environment, transportation, and waste. Overall, we have seen a 12% decrease in core emissions since the 2019 baseline. And this is great baseline progress, but it mostly reflects local policy, updated building and energy codes, as well as changes in the market. As a reminder, Sammamish adopted its first climate action plan in 2023 with the staff member dedicated to sustainability, me, hired that same year. So implementation of the climate action plan, including the creation of the Sustainability Commission, you all, and associated community outreach and programs really began in 2024. So this is,
Pre us.
yeah, this is basically an updated baseline for all of us to be looking at, which is really wonderful.
Not pre all of us. I was, and this is where my complaint starts.
So this would be really great information to have. The climate action plan was originally looking at the baseline year of 2019. So this just gives us some more updated baseline information and also shows that there is progress happening across multiple sectors.
In our climate action plan, if your memory serves, our little bar graph shows our 2019 baseline total is 563,000 metric tons, not 342,000. Now, if you were there when Brightworks showed up in January of 2023 and presented their first numbers that represented Sammamish's baseline emissions, they reported 373,000 metric tons, which comes very close to that number. But that number creeped up over that year to equal this number that finally got published in our climate action plan. So my question is, are we going to revise our climate action plan?
I think that's for a future conversation with the commission. Ultimately, because we did, or council adopted the climate action plan in 2023, typically what we see is a 5-year cycle for updates. We can discuss as a commission and with leadership and council, if an administrative update prior to that time is appropriate. But as of now, this is really just presenting the data as it has been updated and the plan as it stands, all of those actions and analysis are still important to the work that we're doing.
Well, because what I believe happened here between the numbers that first got presented and these numbers is somehow something got in.
Scope of 3 got a little.
Yeah, something got included in here, but it wasn't aviation because the transport number is still really small.
Mhm. Okay, looking at core emissions, building and energy. So this sector includes emissions from energy use and activities that occur within buildings and facilities across Sammamish. It captures emissions from heating, cooling, lighting, and powering residential and commercial buildings, as well as certain industrial processes like energy production and water treatment. City-specific consumption values were updated with most recent values provided by utilities in order to ensure that all of the years of electricity data were consistent year over year. So overall, there was a 12% decrease in buildings and energy from the 2019 baseline. This is, again, the updated 2019 baseline, so it does not match exactly what we see in the Climate Action Plan. Within this sector, electricity emissions declined 32%, again, attributed to that closure of Puget Sound Energy's coal plants, while natural gas emissions increased by 13%. So remember, we looked at the King County numbers, and now we're looking specifically at Sammamish numbers. The natural gas emissions increase is likely attributed to, as I mentioned, greater energy demand during seasonal spikes. And then the decline in electricity emissions is attributed to that coal plant closing, as well as reductions in electricity emissions intensity and improving energy efficiency of technology. Looking forward to next year and the future, building electrification, energy efficient upgrades, including weatherization, and continuing to support community education and related programs will be crucial to maintain and further progress towards our goals.
So Rose, what makes us to, I know that some of those are efficient appliances and all this stuff for electricity decrease, like for the city 31%. What makes us to, for the gas emission to increase?
Yeah, so I mentioned the increase is likely attributed to greater energy demand during seasonal spikes. So for folks who already have natural gas, when they're using more natural gas during really cold times of year or really, hot spikes during the summertime as well, that fluctuation puts more demand on those natural gas energy sources. Yeah, and then we'll also be hopefully when the county releases that attribution analysis, kind of doing a deep dive into some of this data. I will share that out with the commission when available. Really, today is just talking about sharing out the data. I don't have answers to all of the reasons behind this data, but I thought it was important for the commission to see what the update is.
Well, and I think it's highlighting the complexity of greenhouse gas accounting, right?
Very much so. There are a lot that goes into this.
I think about 20% of that electricity reduction is due to cleaner electricity from Puget Sound Energy. Their carbon intensity went from 0.529 tons per megawatt hour down to 0.427, according to the reports they send to the State Department of Commerce. So that's about a 20% decrease in their carbon intensity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which definitely accounts for this huge, 31% is a huge reduction.
Not real happy with that 13% increase in natural gas.
Yeah, and some of that, might be due to folks replacing their furnaces. If they get an addition onto their house, they're doing development and they don't make the choice to switch to an electric furnace.
And we have had growth. Over those years, right? Like every community has, right? And so I don't know when Met Market came online, but there's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Population growth is kind of the undercurrent to a lot of these numbers, which is why the reductions are really wonderful to see where they are. Okay, moving on to transportation. The core emissions transportation sector includes greenhouse gas emissions from the movement of people and goods within the city. covering on-road vehicles as well as non-road equipment used within or associated with Sammamish within our boundaries. There has been a 17% decrease in emissions from on-road vehicles, and this trend contrasts with the population growth that we've seen over the same period, during which emissions would be typically expected to rise. And this overall decrease in on-road emissions reflects not only vehicle fuel economy improvements, but also high electric vehicle adoption within Sammamish. We have one of the highest vehicle adoption rates compared to our neighboring cities and within the state of Washington. However, on the other hand, there has been an 8% increase in non-road equipment, and this can likely be attributed to population increase and additional development within the city. So, lawnmowers, handheld equipment, some of those things that come with adding more people.
I would think COVID had something to do with a 17% decrease as well. Curious to see what changes we know going forward, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we might see that go down even more with more folks using that light rail too. So
But also more people working from home.
yeah,
Coming out of COVID.
that's true.
Yeah.
Doesn't the light rail not help us because it's out of the city limits?
If folks are going to the light rail via transit,
You're right. Don't drive to the park and ride. Take the bus to the park.
you're right. Yeah, if they would be
Or your
driving.
e-bike, right?
Or your e-bike.
Your scooter.
You
Take
keep
your
it
scooter.
There's a,
Carpooling,
there is a chart that supports what Nick just said about
100%.
in this King County geographic report that shows transportation going along pretty evenly and then just taking a big drop and then starting to recover.
COVID might have been the greatest behavioral change for the environment. I mean, a lot of companies are going back to return to office, but
Yeah,
Wow.
had a good run for a couple of years.
Usually in fact.
we need more pandemics. Is that what you're saying?
No,
I don't think so.
that's it.
So looking forward to next year and into the future, continuing to promote electric vehicles, encouraging transit, and supporting community education and programs, as well as our annual campaigns such as, using Metroflex, participating in Switch Your Trips, Bike Everywhere Day, and continued school district collaboration and coordination for increased carpooling. And use of school buses will help continue to reduce vehicle miles traveled and emissions associated with transportation within Sammamish.
And just a shout out for the school levies. I know Issaquah's trying to get electric buses. So those levies are
School
on
buses?
vote. Yes, February 10th.
That's good.
Issaquah
Issaquah
district.
School District trying to get electric buses. Vote for the local levies.
Okay, and the last core emissions sector is solid waste. So emissions from this sector are produced from the generation, transportation, and disposal of landfilled and composted waste produced within Sammamish. While emissions ultimately did increase from the 2019 baseline, it's important to note that the solid waste sector only makes up 2% of Sammamish's total community-wide emissions. And from 2022 to 2023, landfill emissions decreased. However, they were still higher from the 2019 baseline. So something else to note is that emissions from composting are increasing year over year, which could be contributed to population growth, but also reflects an increased composting rate from residents. So these numbers are interesting. Obviously, they're a lot lower than a lot of those other numbers that we were looking at. So any kind of change will reflect a higher perceived percentage change, but is important to take in the whole context of.
There's a tie-in to like
No.
food waste in the United States is, I don't know, roughly 30% of all food grown is actually not compost. It goes into landfills. So landfills are some of the largest producers of greenhouse gas in the country. But yeah, there's a big impact from food and food waste in terms of greenhouse gas production. I don't know on the composting side what happens, but if it's back into reuse, I guess it's not sitting in a landfill because it's really about the methane buildup in landfills that generates the greenhouse gas production, right?
Yeah, so Nick, I know that if you look at the Cedar Hill landfill, so they are using the methane to do the flare station they have. So they're also doing the green energy. Yeah, the producing electricity from those gases. And the extra gas, they just burn it. You will see the flare station, you go there, that they just burn the extra methane, but most of it, they cannot use, there is a certain quality that you need in the methane gas that could generate power.
Yeah.
Not every, all quality can do that. So the one that is not good quality, they burn it.
Mhm.
And the one they can make power, they're doing the green.
And they put it back into the facility operation,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
sell it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
it's.
They put it in the
company,
grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, so their facility is powered by their own power. And then they also can put something in the grid.
So Rose, how
Close
do
loop.
they know how
Yeah.
much, does Republic tell them how much we throw away?
Yeah, they have total tonnage reports for the city.
Okay.
It's really at the city level as part of our contract with Republic. That's very standard across multiple cities, whatever hauler you use. So that data is what's used to inform this, and then that's also actually what the same data that's used for the county as well.
So when these guys go to the garbage truck, not the, or whatever truck goes, he probably gets weighed as a tear weight.
Mhm.
And that's what's reflected.
Yep.
Or what the number you start with in the calculation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know they have a breakdown of kind of the methodology and what goes into that because it does include a little bit more than that, but for the most part, it's just looking at tonnage.
But this could be part of our reduce, reuse, recycle, you know, if we did a bigger campaign on that, don't buy so much stuff. And I mean, I know I could use another campaign on that. You know, like being more conscious of what we're buying and what can be recycled instead of thrown away or composted instead of thrown away.
Absolutely. And something else to consider with solid waste is while the greenhouse gas emissions may not be on paper as high as greenhouse gas emissions from transportation and buildings and energy, there's still the pollution context, right? And the chemical leaching and some of the other environmental impacts that maybe are not captured in a standard geographic greenhouse gas
This
inventory.
greenhouse gas is not CO2, it's methane.
Yeah.
Methane, yes.
So even though it's 2% of overall emissions, you know, the importance of recycling, reducing consumption, supporting a circular economy absolutely still matter for sustainability in general. And looking forward to next year in the future, continuing our community recycling events, supporting residential access and education around recycling and compost bins, especially in multifamily housing. That's a problem across the county. And then educating the community on what goes where and some of those things that we learned at our Republic tour. And then helping to reduce consumption and waste generated, increasing reuse, recycling, and composting for our community. We may not see the needle move quite as clearly in terms of our overall community emissions, but it does still make a difference. So,
yeah, like even just one more thing. When they talked about cans, how many aluminum cans are thrown in the garbage instead of recycled? It's shocking to me. It's like, really? Haven't we been doing that forever? I mean, that would be, that could be a thing we do.
Education.
Yeah, and education, like, you know, and the scuba diver gal who was there
tires
does all the recycling, like aluminum cans with schools and stuff. It'd be kind of cool to raise awareness of that.
Okay, slide please. Okay, so now that we have gone through the county level reports and Sammamish specific data, I thought it might be helpful to see where Sammamish falls compared to some of the other cities in our region. While the overall decrease in emissions is great, the reality is that Sammamish is somewhat behind the other cities included in the county inventory. Given the demographics and composition of the city being pretty residential heavy, this is not necessarily a surprise, and it definitely highlights the importance of community education and engagement with sustainability programs because the majority of emissions in Sammamish do come from the residential sector. So having adopted the Climate Action Plan in 2023, we are still in the relatively early stages of this work and continuing to build partnerships and support targeted programs like Energy Smart Eastside will help continue to move the needle in the right direction. What is most important to note is that we are making progress, and this inventory is helpful to evaluate that progress and plan for the future.
I'd be curious to see what our Des Moines and Newcastle and Normandy Park doing that could be replicated in Sammamish? Because those areas don't have none of any really industry other than retail, right? So it's kind of like Sammamish.
Yeah, I know there are some areas where they have had large plants shut down, so paper mills, production
Yeah.
plants,
Yeah.
and if you have a community that is smaller with a pretty big industrial process like that, that will drastically cut emissions. So not saying that's the case everywhere, but we have seen that in some of the cities.
That's not Newcastle or Normandy Park though. So
But
they're-
also look at their numbers of so they went from 40 to 35 to 31, right? They're gonna have a bigger swing with it.
yeah.
So
Also, Nick, there may not be that many people flying.
The aviation.
25% come from there, okay?
No, these are core numbers. Aviation's not in here.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a comparison in the report that takes overall emissions, and I think
There's another.
we're closer to like 8% reduction if you do include aviation. So everyone's numbers get a little bit less when you include aviation.
So that's 3% a year. We got 25 more years. So not gonna quite get there, are we?
We will talk about
It's
that in
linear.
just a second.
ISQA wasn't calculated, which is fine, right? But I did it anyway. And it's a minus 23%, so they're like a leading city on this. So do we have any learnings from them, given that
Yeah.
I feel like ISQA is the same place as Sammamish?
well, but they have a lot of large buildings and they've done a lot of work working with their large building owners to bring on. So I would bet that has a significant amount to do with it, right? Investments that Costco and others have made to, get on the green building train. That would be that'd be my first thing. Cause I know that's something that, I think some of what this does is highlights what little effect we actually have, right? Because we don't have the ability to regulate some of those larger buildings like in Issaquah or, Bellevue's fairly high as well. And I know both those communities have been doing a lot with their large building owners to bring them along.
So what's going on in Redmond? They stink.
I assume it's the building.
It's gross.
It's
Huh?
all the building in downtown.
It's gross. Just like Shoreline. Shoreline has seen a
Just in
huge,
1 year they went up.
right. Shoreline, I would say, is the same thing. They've had a significant amount of growth around their new light rail stations, right? So, I that's what I would.
Yeah.
Dense.
Probably going on.
Per capita should be going down here pretty quick. You can move in because
Yeah.
it's so dense.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Redmond has so many condos now, like
Yes, did you do a
the
follow?
Minimore Park is essentially full development.
Okay.
But I can send it out.
No,
That's a good. There were so many graphics. I was.
I know. But I just think the map is a really good one to look at too. It's in the report, right, where it shows that the more dense development you have, right, the less GHG you're emitting at the end of the day.
Per capita. Like per capita, you are,
Yes,
yeah.
right. And because it's easier to take transit, right? It's, there are all of these other things that are at your fingertips a little
Easier
bit
to
better.
heat as well.
So
Easier to-
generally,
To heat.
Easier to heat,
Yeah.
easier to walk to a restaurant as opposed to drive, right? Like there's
Yep,
all
yep,
of these
yep.
different things.
Brooke, did you have a question?
yeah, I was gonna say, generally, I think this could be a candidate, for including some of this information in the next sustainability guide.
Absolutely, I think we could do that.
Because, we can, where we wanna highlight that people could take, hey, we're doing great, but we could take more action here or there.
Jerks in ISQA are beating us. So
Time to throw down.
Yeah. And I do want to note that a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions, you'll see have, asterisks or maybe some data. And part of the reason it's some of these cities do their own greenhouse gas emissions inventory work. That methodology might slightly differ from the county. So when you're looking at this at a county scale and kind of extrapolating down to the city, it's not going to be an apples to comparison to their individual methodology. And so that's why some of those numbers are omitted or have notes next to them. Yeah. Next slide, please. See if I can- So, speaking of the future, I believe many of you are familiar with this wedge analysis. We have the previous wedge analysis included in our climate action plan, but this updated wedge graphic forecasts how specific existing and proposed 2025 policy measures and programs can contribute to reduce emissions at the county scale, which ultimately extrapolates down to Sammamish. The top gray line, so just the top of the blue section, shows the emissions projection if no action is taken compared to emissions reductions from existing federal, state, and local policies, as well as measures proposed in the adopted 2025 County Climate Action Plan. Under a no action future, King County greenhouse gas emissions are projected to increase 17% by 2030 and 30% by 2050. However, if fully implemented, existing federal, state, and regional policies, I should note as of June 2025, obviously there's a lot changing federally, could reduce King County's greenhouse gas emissions by 29% by 2030 and 46% by 2050. And when you combine those policies with proposed county climate actions, it is projected to reduce emissions 33% by 2030 and 70% by 2050. You may note those numbers are lower than our Sammamish Climate Action Plan goals. And even with these combined efforts of policy and actions, total reductions do fall short of targets, particularly those 2030 and 2050 reduction goals. Next slide, please. So this is another depiction of the same graphic broken down by emissions sector. So you can really see kind of a visual representation. As with the previous graph, the white space above the dotted green line, so that bottom section where you see additional actions needed, that illustrates the gap that the county and cities must collectively bridge to achieve our ambitious goals of a 50% reduction by 2030 and then a 96% reduction by 2050. While King County and partner cities only control some of these factors you see on the right, the short and long-term impacts that collective action and community education can have is substantial. The reality is that many cities and the county may fall short of 2030 goals. However, there is no better time than the present to continue to establish programs, develop partnerships, and build momentum towards the 2050 target. It is also worth noting that whether specific GHG reduction goals are met or not, each action contributes not just to putting less greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere, but also to improving air quality, public health, and the environment here at home. Ultimately, continuing to move this work forward while monitoring progress along the way will improve the quality of life and climate outcomes for our city and county as a whole. All right. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate you bearing with me. I know this was a very data-heavy presentation. And there's even more data and information available if you do want to go read through those entire reports. I did mention that King County is working on a supplemental attribution analysis and Excel tool that will help really break down some of this data, and it's something that you can play with and compare our city compared to the county. We do not know exactly when that will be shared and to what detail those reports will be, but once those are available, I will share those with the commission. And those two resources are really just intended to provide more context and background to the summary data that we covered today. So it won't be new information, it'll just be kind of some further discussion and then a different format. And then I was kind of posing a question to you all, in addition to the Excel tool and attribution analysis when available, if there's interest from the commission in kind of re-engaging with any sections of this report during the January meeting. It would give you all a month to reread through these, send me questions, and then we can revisit any areas that the commission might be interested in doing a deep dive on. Just some kind of high-level topics that I was thinking about are, a deeper analysis of the existing and proposed measures at the county level that looks at specific policy or climate actions, looking specifically at the county's climate action plan, or looking into the methodology between or behind each industry sector. We also could do a deeper dive specifically on the greenhouse gas geographic inventory or the consumptions-based inventory, recognizing that that is at a county level. So just keeping that in mind, we really want to focus in on how that can apply to Sammamish.
I think that would be interesting in January is to take the metrics, because part of our February meeting will be figuring out what actions we want to work on in 2026 related to the climate action plan. So I guess if diving deeper into the data shows that there are wider gaps in some areas than others, maybe that becomes a focus for next year. So there may be a way to kind of bridge the metrics with what we think we should focus on next year, if the data leads us there, or the group may decide there are other areas that we haven't touched in the climate action plan that are also worthy of attention.
I just wanted to bring up, and thanks that you brought it up. It'd be nice. I mean, I'm wondering if we could consider too, to do the heat pump and all that. I mean, that's like $20,000 or $30,000. I mean, it's not something that we can do at my house right now. I'm wondering if we can also consider, just putting it out there, focusing on other things people can do that maybe not cost so much, right? Like, when we speak to families or when we went to the HOA, other ideas, like, just not to talk about it now.
Smaller scale, shorter term.
Also some of that,
Yeah.
not just the submission, because this is huge.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we can convince many people to stop traveling by airplane.
No, but low hanging fruit would be, I don't know what the typical person sets their thermostat on in the winter, but you lower it by 1 degree. What's the impact? It's less greenhouse gas
Yes.
reduction. You save money. Does 1 degree really make a difference in terms of how warm your house is? Maybe not, but it could have a big impact on the environment. So I like
That could work.
where you're going with that. What's the low hanging fruit that we haven't thought about? Yeah.
Well, and the message to get to the cost factor is we're not expecting them to replace a 5-year-old gas furnace. But when it gets to 15 years old, you might want to think about a heat pump. The point I was making about, 3%. We don't have, this is a very long-term project out there at 2050. That's where we want to be. If we just nibble off a little bit each year, if 100 people in the city have a gas furnace that's on its last legs and convert to heat pumps, we get another couple of percent improvement.
But I agree with you. And what I'm trying to wrap my head around with what Rose presented today is, how do you measure what you just talked about? Like, if we're nibbling off at different things, how do we measure that impact against the plan? And it sounds like it's
It requires consultant support.
Right.
Which is why we do that as part of a climate action plan update.
Yeah.
Would be the typical cadence.
Yeah.
So when will the next Cascadia study be done? 3 years from now?
Typically, it's at a cadence of 5 years.
Okay.
So
20, last one was done in 2024.
2023. Oops.
Okay, so
Well, 2023 data.
full year data.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that is awesome. I think it's great. And I think it's important for people to have that in their mind, like, oh, I'm going to replace my furnace. What else can I do? Like when we went to Klahani, many of them had just replaced it, or 2 people said, and they didn't even know about heat pumps. So while I think that is great, I also would love to be able to consider being more inclusive for everyone in the family. So like little kids can even be doing less food waste. Get everybody on the mindset rather than just this huge thing that's really expensive, like that's a higher level, that kids aren't even going to be able to fathom, but doing like also on the side or in addition to reducing, reusing, recycling, or reducing food waste, or just another thing, another avenue.
I know that was one of the things that we tried to put some ideas for in the Sustainable Sammamish Guide. So kind of more things on top of those, or expanding on those sorts of smaller things alongside the larger things. Because the guide does have a decent number of smaller things, but there's more things that people could be doing theoretically. But that could also just as a reference point, the things listed out in that could be something to point people towards.
Yeah. I think as we talk about the outreach plan for next year, that can definitely be part of the conversation. You know, what avenues have we not explored? What avenues can the commission really double down on? I know we did some HOA presentations. We're continuing to build the relationship with the schools. So yeah, I think absolutely something to revisit for the work plan for next year.
And think about for Earth Day too, because Earth Day, you know, I don't know, you didn't have the data last year. What did we talk to? 300
It was
families and kids, hundreds of people, right? So to Christie's point, maybe we want to have some discussions about the low-hanging fruit. Like, you know, maybe that's part of the new wheel. We have those thought-provoking questions on there, like, what are you doing to reduce food waste in your house, right? You know, and the kids are thinking about it, the parents are right there. Yeah, you know, but maybe we revisit the questions on our sustainability wheel, and they're driven more towards like low-hanging fruit.
Love it.
And I'm not, but to your point, the graph and the data, you definitely need to do the bigger things. But I'm just saying, giving the mindset to everybody, all the people in the family.
Well, it gets them thinking, and hopefully they'll expand their vision as they get into it. And
But the work you're doing in the schools is paying off, because I have a few friends whose kids are shaming them about using single-use plastics.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and,
Working with the kids is
yeah, they're really going after the parents, which is great.
Oh yeah, I think attacking the parents or the kids is the best approach.
Now, plus it's the, you know, if we can frame their mindset, that was huge.
All right. As a closing thought, I did pull up this map that we were referencing. So I'm just going to quickly show that, give that visual representation of emissions. So you see Sammamish is right here. So looking at emissions by neighborhood, we've definitely got some higher numbers. And again, as I mentioned, higher income suburban areas, this tends to be a trend, and is something we can continue to think about and discuss as we talk about outreach, planning and strategies for next year.
What's our color? I don't see where.
It's by census tract, so it's not by city.
Red, orange, and yellow.
We're red, orange, and yellow. Oh, we're
Yeah.
the high ones.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind. It all matters. All of those aspects of the climate action plan have targeted, you know, like Nick mentioned, low-hanging fruit, but it also has some of those higher ticket, really highly impactful actions as well, and really requires that holistic approach. So,
Well, you can sure see the benefit of Seattle City Light to Seattle.
No, it's also more urban.
Yeah, the density makes a big difference too.
Well, no, and it's a carbon footprint of about 19 pounds per megawatt hour.
Right.
Seattle City Light is as an extremely clean, low carbon intensity utility.
That's great.
It's hydropower.
They own 7 dams. Yeah, it's all basically all hydro.
Yeah, they have hydro assets.
PSC got the short stick on the dam ownership.
Well, they're trying to make up for it with wind farms.
Yeah,
but
and
Well, this there was a little bit more to talk about.
I was going to say, Swan, I know you had mentioned a couple things for.
Did you want to mention anything about the Frosty Fest first? I saw that.
Yes, Frosty Fest next
We
week.
should cover that briefly.
Wednesday. It's a relatively small event this year compared to past years. So, you know, if one or two of you wanted to show up, hands raised, it'll be very similar to the trunk or treat event where we have a table. We've got the sustainability wheel with some holiday items, and we're helping folks with waste sorting and kind of doing some of that.
is it mostly geared towards kids?
Yeah, very much a kid-friendly event. So we keep it very simple and high level. I've got little, you know, signs with recycling, compost, garbage, and then some common holiday items that they tell me where they go. And they really knew their stuff at trunk or treat. So we'll probably get some repeat kiddos this time around. But yeah, I'll send out a reminder email. It's next Wednesday. I believe
4 to 7.
4 to 7, yes. I was gonna say 6 to 7, but that's too short. 4 to 7. Would love to see you there. You know, if you've got kiddos of your own, feel free to bring them. But again, it's we'll just have one booth. So come say hi.
It's outside, right?
It'll be inside this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'll probably be just in this main hallway here or possibly
Okay.
in the lobby.
All right, anything else?
I think Juan had a couple.
couple quick things. One of them, this is more just about what's like, and this is almost like on a like I guess organization, like what sort of with regards to things like the noxious weeds or other stuff, like what input or pressure can we, or like guidance can we give towards the council to make those sorts of changes? Like what information like would be helpful to be able to get together for them or present for them so that those sorts of changes could happen, or for other things like there's a recent thing where there's a planning contract for like reviewing the streetlights in the city, putting like pressure on that towards more environmentally friendly lights or more like things that are going to lights that are going to be friendlier for like creatures like bats in the environment. Like what input we can give towards that process, either directly towards the council or towards like the other structures within the city.
So I'm gonna jump in super quick. Let's first get you what our current practice is,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely,
Related to noxious weeds. So let's start there, I think, and then you could determine, right, what would be next. For the street light,
Mhm.
LED conversion is definitely a part of
Mhm.
that, right? So that you know, that has the sustainability, that's part of it. But we could bring Public Works in to talk to you about what is the plan for that.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing. If we do have the Q&A
Mhm.
matrix, which has been a little quiet for the past couple of months. But if you have questions like that and you see something at council or out in the community, please send them my way, and then we'll include that in future agendas. And absolutely, if there's questions on specific programs, we can have those departments come speak to you all.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Was it?
That's all
Oh, okay.
I
That was
I have some other stuff that'll send you an email that would be longer to talk about now.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. And then also, if you guys have, specific questions or concerns, like we have this shared commission time, but I'm also a resource for you. So if you did want to meet one-on-one to talk about a specific program or idea, I'm a resource for you and can connect you with the right folks, or at least provide a response from the city's perspective. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments, concerns, questions? All right, I move to adjourn our meeting tonight. Can I get someone to?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor of ending tonight's meeting 5 minutes early, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?